and welcome to this month's DIY project. Today I am going to be showing you how to make a raised bed. This is going to be super simple, however I'm going to show you whether you are going to have square corners or maybe you will need something angled. So I'm going to show you both cutting methods. I'm also going to be showing you how to make this into a no-dig raised bed. So a no-dig raised bed is a type of gardening. If you don't know what it is, get on Google and have a look. But basically it means that when we make this raised bed, we are going to line it with cardboard, and that's going to stop the weeds coming up. Now, one little tip that I found out not that long ago: take all of the sellotape off of any of your cardboard boxes beforehand. So when I first made my no-dig raised bed, probably about 4 years ago now, that was my biggest mistake. I didn't even think about it. I just got so excited, laid the cardboard down, and since I've been digging up sellotape. So it's not great, so make sure you do that step. And yes, so we're going to be making this raised bed. It's a raised bed that I've had here before, but the wood was rotting and it was quite a shallow raised bed as well. So this one's going to be a lot deeper, and it's going to be the perfect size to match the shed because it wasn't quite up to it. So now this is going to go straight up to the shed, and it's going to be a lovely growing space. So as always, we are going to run through everything that you're going to need for this. So one is your my favourite tool ever. We have our impact driver, we've got a drill, we've got some drill bits, we've got a tape measure, level. This is a mallet that you might not need depending on whether you're doing the angles or not. Again, these are the brackets that I'm going to be using for the angled ones, so you might not need them. A bevel for the angles, and then we've got some decking screws there. So you can either use decking screws or you can use galvanized screws, and that's just going to protect it a bit from the weather. And then we have our wood. So I have bought some brand new scaffold boards here. These are a little bit of a treat. I think they cost £56 for all four, and I think they're about 3.9 meters long. So yes, nice chunky wood. And then I've got this old scrappy bit of wood that I'm going to use for the corner posts of the square corners. So yeah, the wood, basically what you want to get is the biggest, chunkiest wood that you can afford, but ideally you don't want it treated. Treated will mean that it will last longer, however it's not great to have your soil up against the treated wood, leaching all those chemicals out into the soil and then going into your vegetables. So yeah, ideally you don't want it treated. You can treat it yourself. I think there is a food safe preserver out there that you can buy, so if you really want to try and extend the lifetime, however that's going to do you about 8 years before you have to think about replacing it, so it's not too bad. And here is the site for the raised bed. So as I said, it's going up against my power shed. So basically this is going to be 2 square edges, and then this one is the one that's going to be angled. So I'm sort of standing in line with the end of the shed there, but there is my corner post for the gate. So I'm going to have one that goes on an angle there. Looking around my allotment very quickly, you can see I love raised beds. There's so many benefits to them. I'm on a really heavy clay ground here. By having the raised beds, it means that I can add organic matter in, I can add manure in to condition the soil really easily. The other reason why I like raised beds is because it also gets very waterlogged down here during the winter time, and just keeping that soil level up slightly means that the beds don't get waterlogged, but this ground does. There are so many other more benefits. One, I just find them easier to weed. You can just do them in sections every single day rather than having a big expanse of ground. And also I find it better with Olive, so I can fence off individual raised beds, and also I do find she sticks to the pathways, bless her. So yeah, they are my reasons for loving raised beds. If you're going to have some, you don't have to have loads, but what I would suggest is you do a few different sizes. So I've got some long thin ones for sort of brassicas, and then I'm going to have these big square ones. So these are what I would normally put my potatoes, my sweet corn and my squash in. So I've got a few of these dotted around, and then I change the crops every year. So first of all, I'm going to decide on the shape of my bed. So the easiest way to do this is with a bit of string and some tent pegs, and I'm just going to pop the peg in sort of the rough position of where I want the bed to end up. And that's going to give me a good guide for when I'm taking my measurements. Now I'm going to measure up for my first board. So this is going to be the short pieces, and then the longer pieces are going to be on the other side. So I'm just going to measure exactly where I want it. So that is 224, and then what I need to do is I need to take off the depth of 2 of these. So that's going to mean that your bed is going to line up perfectly with either end and be the length that you want it. Now I have my measurements, I can get my miter saw out and I can cut the first piece of wood. And there we have it, our first board cut. So next what we're going to do is we're going to grab our scrap piece of wood and we're going to cut. I'm going to cut 2 lengths of this because I'm doing half of my bed angled, whereas if you're doing a square bed, then yeah, cut all 4 now. So basically we need to measure the depth of our wood and cut these into sections for that. The depth of my wood there is 220, so I just need to cut 220 there. Normally I always square up my wood, but with these scaffold boards, as I said, they're brand new, so they don't need squaring up. However, I will do it with this piece of scrap wood here. So I'll cut that knot out of it as well. And now I'm going to use this as a packer down the other end to keep my wood balanced. Measure 220 and cut 2 of these. We've got our block of wood here, and that we're just going to position that right up in the corner so it's perfect and flush with everything. We have our drill, which we have set up with a 4mm drill bit. So I'm going to go for 3 screws in this. So just want to make your pilot hole there, and then we've got our decking screws, so they're going to go that far into the wood, so that's perfect. Take the impact driver and screw it in place. And now we're going to do the same on the other end. So that is the first board in place, and now is the time to get your level out. And it is actually level. I think that's because I've had an existing bed here, so the ground is level. If it's not, you're going to need to take your shovel and dig a little bit until it gets level. Or alternatively, you could pack it up and then fill that gap with soil later on down the line. The next step is to cut your second board. So I know that I want my board the same length of this shed, which is 2.5 meters. So I'm going to cut my second board to that. I'm sure I've shown you this before, but this miter saw has a laser on it, and you can run that laser so then you can make sure your wood is in the perfect position for the cut line. Einhell do 2 different types of miter saws. So I've got the standard one, but they do have one that slides out, which would mean that I could cut this completely. However, if you don't have that, this is how to do it. All you need to do, I need 2 hands to do this though, is you need to flip the board over, and I'll show you in a second. So there you go, I have flipped the board over, which now means we've got this uncut area here. I've lined it back up with the laser, and then you can just double check that it's going to go exactly into the right position there by bringing the saw down. Just pulled these 2 boards away from the shed a little bit so I can get in here to screw them together. So basically you just want to make sure that they're all level with each other. So this is level here. See, I've had to push it down slightly because the ground isn't level where I am. So we're not screwing through here, we are screwing through here into this block here. So you don't actually screw these 2 pieces of wood together, they're held in place by the corner block. So I'm going to grab my pilot drill, like that. I'm just going to get one screw in first, and that will hold it in place while I do the others. Nice and level, like that. Now to do the rest. So I'm putting 3 screws in here. And there you go, that is one corner done. Now I'm going to repeat it on the other side over there, and measure that up. And Olive's going to help. No, she's not much help. There we go, we have 3 sides done, and before we get carried away, I am going to line this with cardboard. Now what I've done in the past doesn't work, so what I've done, I have done it by laying the cardboard and then turning the cardboard up here, but actually then that leaves a gap for the weeds to come up on the inside. So the best thing to do is to actually have the cardboard coming out onto the floor, and then that's going to stop the weeds from coming up the side, especially bindweed. So if you wanted a square or rectangular bed, you would just keep going with this method of doing the posts in the corner and fixing them in place. However, we have an angled piece, so it's not too angled, but it's still enough that I'm going to have to cut the wood differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, instead of measuring from the inside of this wood to the inside of that one, which is where the piece of wood's going, I'm actually going to measure from the end to the other end, and that's going to give me a bit of leeway for when I cut the angle. So I have my board and it is propped up on either end, so this is making sure that this point lines up here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to draw it underneath and mark that line there. I'm going to do the same again down here. And these are going to give us the angles that we want to set our saw at. We've got our line here, and I've just marked the end of the wood with the word shed, and then I've done post at the other end, so I don't get confused because they are going to be different angles. So this is the sliding bevel. So you want to push the wooden part up to the wood, and you want to move this until you've got it at the right angle of that line that you made, and then just tighten it up. Now we need to take this to the miter saw. For this step I'm going to suggest taking out the battery. That just makes it a little bit safer while you're working. So at the back here there is a twisty turning knob which you can undo, and that tilts the saw like that. So all you do is you take your bevel, you make sure that the wood is flat on the surface there, and you can also just pull back the guard there, but again I've taken the battery out so there's no chance of this turning on. So I'm just going to tilt this until that bevel is completely parallel with the saw blade, and then I'm just going to tighten it up like that. So you can see it's only a very slight tilt, but that is going to make all the difference to our cut. So there it is, there is the cut that I've just done. Let's see, and look at that, that lines up with my line perfectly, but you can't see it anymore. So ideally what you'd have is you'd have the sliding miter saw, so you can pull it out like that and cut the whole way through. I don't have that, so I'm going to finish that off with a handsaw. And now I'm just going to grab my bevel and I'm going to do exactly the same to the other end, and then hopefully they should fit. And here it is. So as you can see, that is the perfect angle for the piece of wood. But now we have the problem of not being able to put a square post in here to fix to. So this is where brackets come in. You can get loads of different brackets, but these were just out of my dad's garage. So I am going to take a mallet and I'm going to make this angle more acute, so then it fits in there nice and snug, and we can screw that in place. So now I have my angled bracket bent into shape. I'm going to lift this board up, make sure these are level at the top. I'm going to bring that to the edge, exactly where it needs to be, and then I'm going to mark the inside of the board. I'm just going to run a line up there, and I'm going to drop this back down, and this is so then we can place our bracket up to that line, screw this in place, and then bring this board up, because it's going to be a lot easier doing it like that. So got my impact driver, and this time I have these shorter screws. They're still galvanized, so they're not going to go rusty. I'm just going to put this almost dead in the center. It's going to hold it in place. Okay, like that, and then we can lift this board up, pop that into place like that, and then screw these ones in from the other side. Now I just need to do exactly the same on the other side, so I've already done my bracket there, and then we just need to make sure these are level, all lining up, and screw it in place. And there it is. One raised bed, done two different ways to fit any space you want. Now I'm going to fill this up with mixture of some composted material that hasn't yet decomposed, and then I'm going to fill it up with manure when I get a big delivery of it. I am over the moon with this one. It's going to be absolutely perfect for my squashes next summer, so bring on next year. But yeah, it's hardly taken any time. It has taken some materials, but it's better to invest and get a longer life out of them rather than go on the cheap side. So yeah, this is going to do me for years to come, and I'm so happy. It's going to give me lots of lovely depth for growing all of my squashes. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Next month I will be making a tutorial on how to make a cold frame. So this is going to be absolutely perfect for winter seedlings that you're growing. Sorry, I've got Olive, she's wanting to come up, but my dress is slippy. So any winter seedlings that you're growing, or spring seedlings that you want to get away from the frost. So yeah, tune in next month and I shall show you how to make a cold frame.